Night falls over the Himalayan foothills. A long, jagged ridge cuts through the sky. Just months after the bloody siege of Nalapani, British troops found themselves climbing yet another ridge. Another fort, and a chance to prove that the defeat at Nalapani was an anomaly. On the southern arm of the Jaithak Ridge, Major Ludlow led a column of elite grenadiers. Their orders were simple: capture the outer Gorkha posts, gain a strong position, and wait for a second British column to attack from the north. It was here, at a ruined temple called Jumta, Ludlow was supposed to wait. His attack was to be one of a coordinated strike, two columns converging on Ranjor Singh Thapa's main position at Jaithak. After easily defeating a few small Gurkha outposts on their way up to the temple, the British column were in position. Then suddenly, someone spotted it. A small Gurkha stockade further up the ridge. Lightly held, or so it seemed. Ludlow's grenadiers, still bitter from Nalapani, murmur angrily. "Let us take it, sir," said one of them. "Let us show them what British steel can do." What happened next would decide the fate of the battle before it had even begun. Ludlow suddenly found himself caught between following orders or going for glory, but after a brief pause, he gave the order for his men to advance. The British believed they were about to storm another minor outpost, but in reality, they were walking straight into a trap. To understand Jaithak, we must return to the aftermath of Nalapani. The British had taken the ruined fort, but at a cost that stunned their commanders. Back in London and Calcutta, questions were being asked about the performance of the British Army at Nalapani, as well as the suitability of those in charge. If a few hundred Gorkhas in a mud fort could bleed the company so badly, what would happen if Nepal chose to fight on every ridge? To the west of Nalapani, the next key position was the town of Nahan and the heights above it, crowned and overlooked by the fort of Jaithak. Here, the Gurkha defence was commanded by Ranjor Singh Thapa, son of the veteran general Amar Singh Thapa, governor of Kumaon and Garhwal. Orders from his father were clear: abandon Nahan, occupy the heights above it, and hold the Jaithak fort as well as the surrounding ridges to deny the British a secure foothold in the hills. On paper, the British held the town. However, in reality, the high ground and the advantage belonged to the Gorkhas. Jaithak was not a single hill. It was a system of ridges, with the highest point at 3,600 feet above the level of the plains, with the main fort positioned where two spurs met, overlooking the deep valleys. Outer pickets and stockades guarded the approaches, with steep slopes, narrow tracks, and thick forest. If Nalapani was a shield of stone and mud, Jaithak was a drawn bow, ready to strike down into the plains. Among Ranjor Singh Thapa's officers was Jaspal Thapa, an extremely capable and seasoned field commander entrusted with the defence of the southern approaches. Ranjor Singh positioned himself at the front of the main ridge, while Jaspal Thapa held the southern stockades, with other officers posted along the approaches to harass and delay the British. Among Ranjor's forward commanders, a notable young leader, Balbhadra Kunwar, a justified decision given Kunwar's experience humiliating the British at Nalapani. As for the British, after the failure at Nalapani and the death of General Gillespie, a new commander took charge, Major General Gabriel Martindale. Martindale captured Nahan in late December 1814 and quickly turned his attention to Jaithak. Although an experienced commander, Martindale understood the costs of frontal assaults on hill forts. His plan was cautious, and some would later argue, too cautious. Two detachments would climb different arms of the ridge and gain strong positions. Ludlow from the south and Major Richards from the north. Both majors were to wait for the correct moment and at the agreed time strike as two attacking forces together. However, this was no ordinary enemy. They were attacking a Himalayan ridge defended by soldiers of the Gorkhali Empire, so even the simplest of plans could die on the ground. On the night of December the 25th, 1814, Major Ludlow and his men climbed the southern ridge. His orders were strict: defeat any and all Gurkha outposts, secure a strong position, and wait for the correct moment to attack. But Ludlow's men climbed with something else burning inside them: anger from Nalapani, and an eagerness to redeem their honour, as well as a confidence in their seasoned fighting ability. The atmosphere was tense. They wanted a fight. Upon reaching the small Jumta village at midnight, a brief firefight broke out. Gurkha scouts spotted them, and shots cracked through the mist as the British fended off the Gorkhas, seemingly testing them as they withdrew deeper into the ridge. According to Martindale's plan, Ludlow should have stopped here. He had achieved his objective and held a forward position after driving out the enemy's first line. He should have held, fortified, and waited for Major Richards. However, the ridge ahead rose like a challenge, and in the misty gloom of the ridge, Ludlow's men spotted a small wooden stockade. Frustrated by the static orders and haunted by the humiliation of Nalapani, Ludlow's grenadiers saw an opportunity to strike a blow. The stockade was small and lightly constructed and was seemingly held by only a handful of Gorkhas. Perfect for another quick win. Ludlow hesitated. He knew his orders were clear: do not advance beyond the first objective. Pressure from his men was overwhelming. The grenadiers wanted redemption. They were hungry for victory, and they believed they could take it within minutes. Ludlow gave the order. The column moved towards the outpost with confidence in another easy win. However, watching their approach was a substantial Gorkha force which lay concealed, positioned along the ridge and masked by the forest terrain. Drawing on Balbhadra Kunwar's experiences at Nalapani, Jasbal Thapa understood how British columns advanced and how pride could draw them forward. As the grenadiers approached, they were quickly funneled uphill. Suddenly, gunfire broke out from both flanks. A devastating Gorkha crossfire, perfectly adapted to the ridge. Ludlow and his men had walked straight into a trap. He tried to rally his men, but they were pinned on a narrow spur and being fired upon from both sides. As confusion tore through the column, they began falling back in panic. And so the Gorkhas surged forward with their kukris. But Jasbal Thapa, calm and confident, did not pursue far. He had already achieved his goal and maintained his discipline. By dawn, Ludlow's column had fallen back toward camp, and the southern arm of the pincer movement was broken before Major Richards in the north had even made contact. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, and the entire British plan began to unravel. Ludlow sent word back to Martindale. The stockade was too strong, the position was too dangerous, and he would not be able to advance again without reinforcements. On the other side of the ridge to the north, by midday, Major Richards had reached a defensive position. However, as quickly as they were able to gaze upon the fort, Gorkha detachments started striking. Marksmen fired from concealed rock shelves and kept engaging Richards' men with a consistent volley of fire. And in the early afternoon, Ranjor Singh Thapa, the Gurkha commander at Jaithak, gathered his men outside the fort walls and initiated further attacks on Major Richards and his men. The British troops faced several downhill charges and fierce attacks from the Gurkha warriors throughout the day. But they held firm. By sunset, the tired British soldiers had repulsed multiple Gurkha charges. But Richards had still not received any indication as to Ludlow's whereabouts and began to realise the situation they were in. Running low on ammunition and having received no reinforcements, Major General Martindale finally informed Richards of Ludlow's defeat in the south, and his troops were eventually ordered to retire under the cover of darkness. Now undertaking a chaotic and dangerously unplanned descent, the retreat was confused and the British suffered significant losses. Martindale was surprised. He completely underestimated the scale of the Jaithak Ridge and how well the Gurkhas had fortified their positions. With Ludlow routed, Richards exhausted, and supplies dwindling, he realised his men found themselves unprepared for another mountain assault and chose caution instead of action. A rational decision, but a disastrous one for morale. The failure of Martindale and the other British commanders in their respective sectors led Governor-General Lord Hastings to eventually consolidate command under Major General David Ochiloni. Ochiloni changed the war, methodical sieges and cutting supply routes throughout surrounding territories, eventually forcing the Gurkhas to abandon Jaithak as the wider campaign turned against them. The British casualties at Jaithak were significant, with estimates reaching up into the multiple hundreds and Ludlow's columns suffering the worst losses. As for Ranjit Singh Thapa and his commanders, Jaithak was a validation of Gorkha defensive prowess. The ridge was held without significant Gorkha losses, and the British were once again humiliated. Another ridge they could not take, at the hands of disciplined, determined Gorkhas,